March 12, 1942. 22,000 feet above the North Sea, a thin layer of mist obscured the churning waves below. The cold wind howled past the cockpit of Flight Lieutenant Art Beckett's Hawker Hurricane, rattling the instruments as if mocking him. His aircraft, stout and heavily armored, felt like a lumbering giant compared to the sleek Messerschmitt Bf-109s darting above him like predatory sparrows. "Climb faster, Beckett. You'll never make it against those Me-109s," shouted squadron leader Thomas Harper over the radio, irritation edging his tone. Behind him, the younger pilots snickered, exchanging glances that said plainly what they thought. Art's Hurricane was hopeless in vertical combat, and maybe on paper they were right. The Hurricane's climb rate was poor, especially compared to the nimble, lightweight German fighters. Its heavy frame and robust construction made it durable but sluggish, seemingly a death sentence in a dogfight that favored energy and altitude. But Art had spent countless hours learning its quirks, its strengths hidden beneath what everyone else saw as a liability. He knew that while his plane struggled to gain height, it could maintain speed exceptionally well in level flight. Every test, every sortie, every harrowing encounter had reinforced one truth: vertical duels were suicide, but level fights, swift, controlled and relentless, were a different story. The alarm on the radio cut through his focus. Enemy fighters spotted, diving in from high above. Tracers tore through the clouds as the first Messerschmitts closed in. Art's heart pounded, yet he refused the instinct to climb and meet them on their terms. Instead, he pressed the throttle, leveled the wings, and surged forward. The Hurricane, though mocked for its vertical weakness, carved a straight, unforgiving path through the sky. "You're not getting away, old man," Harper barked, now frantically trying to climb faster to engage. Art smirked behind his oxygen mask, understanding that his aircraft's limitation would become a deadly advantage if played correctly. The Germans, expecting an easy climb-and-burst engagement, were about to discover the cost of underestimating knowledge over raw numbers. Tracers whizzed past him, and the rumble of engines filled the air as Messerschmitts attempted to follow, their sleek frames faltering as they pushed their climb too aggressively. Art maintained his speed, level and relentless, knowing the moment the enemy overstretched would come, and when it did, he would strike. The first Messerschmitt, a silver Bf-109 with markings streaked in red, strained to gain altitude. Its engine roared, propeller biting at the thin, icy air, but the climb was sluggish. Art's Hurricane, bulky and heavy though it was, maintained its pace effortlessly in level flight. The German pilot's eyes widened as he realized he was losing ground despite superior climb performance on paper. Art's finger hovered over the trigger, waiting for the enemy to make the crucial mistake. The Bf-109 began to stall slightly, its nose pitching upward as the pilot tried to chase Art into the sky. That slight hesitation was all Art needed. He rolled his sights onto the fighter, compressed the trigger, and a stream of tracer rounds spat from the Hurricane's 8-303 machine guns. Sparks danced across the enemy fuselage as it shuddered violently, smoke trailing from its engine. Within seconds, the Messerschmitt went into an uncontrolled spin, spiraling down toward the North Sea. A gasp echoed through the squadron comms. Even Harper, who had criticized Art just minutes before, muttered incredulously, He's actually doing it." Art didn't pause to savor the kill. The second and third enemy fighters, emboldened by their comrades' audacity, tried to mimic the vertical pursuit. Again they overreached. Their speed bled away in the climb, their engines straining at the limit. Art weaved his Hurricane with minimal turns, staying level, conserving energy, and letting the enemy come to him. One after another, the Messerschmitts stalled slightly or overextended, giving Art perfect firing solutions. Tracers stitched fiery lines through the thin clouds as his machine guns hammered the enemies, each burst precise, each maneuver calculated. 6 times in the span of minutes. 6 enemy aircraft were dispatched, none of Art's kills, requiring a single desperate climb, none forcing him to compromise his speed. The remaining Luftwaffe pilots began to hesitate. Their initial confidence faltered as they saw the consequences of chasing a hurricane on the level. Art's technique was counterintuitive, defying every expectation of how the slow climber should be used in combat. Yet here he was, cutting down fighters one by one, his reputation growing with each calculated strike. Below, the grey North Sea churned, reflecting the brief shafts of sunlight piercing the clouds. From above, the battle seemed almost choreographed, a single hurricane dictating the terms, exploiting physics and turning an apparent weakness into lethal precision. The remaining Messerschmitts circled, frustration radiating from their formation like heat from an engine. They had expected an easy prey, a lumbering hurricane that couldn't climb with them, but Art Beckett had shattered their assumptions. Every attempt to gain the vertical advantage ended in disaster, their speed bleeding away as they struggled to overtake him. "Keep your eyes sharp, lads," Art muttered into the radio, calm but sharp. "They'll make mistakes if they keep chasing." Sure enough, one of the pilots, desperate to recover lost pride, pulled his Bf-109 into a steep climb, trying to force a head-on engagement. Art didn't budge. He maintained his level speed, letting the German fight against gravity and momentum. As predicted, the enemy fighter began to stall, his nose dipping dangerously as airflow over the wings disrupted. Art lined up, fired, and watched as the aircraft wavered before spiraling down in a plume of smoke. The other enemy pilots hesitated, their aggressive tactics now tempered by fear. For the first time, they were reacting to Art's control rather than dictating the battle themselves. And Art, knowing his hurricane could maintain energy far longer in level flight, pressed the advantage. Each level maneuver kept him fast, safe, and deadly. Harper's voice came over the comms, tinged with both relief and disbelief. "Beckett, 6 confirmed. 6. You didn't even turn back once." Art allowed himself a brief nod. He had no time to gloat. Enemy fighters were still circling, and he needed to ensure the squadron's survival. But in that moment, the truth became undeniable. Understanding an aircraft's limits and exploiting them could be more lethal than raw performance on paper. The remaining Luftwaffe pilots were now hesitant, wary of engaging a plane that seemed almost untouchable. Art's squadron, inspired by his tactics, began to follow his lead. They maintained level speed, avoided vertical duels, and let the enemy overcommit. The sky, once dominated by fear of superior climb rates, now belonged to the pilots who understood strategy, discipline, and the lethal potential of physics applied in combat. Back at the airbase later that afternoon, the squadron gathered around Art's hurricane, still streaked with the marks of combat. Engines idling, wings trembling from the recent maneuvers, the aircraft seemed almost alive, a testament to both its durability and the skill of the man who had mastered it. "You're telling me all this time we were wrong about the hurricane?" Parker asked, still catching his breath. His young face reflected awe and disbelief. Art shook his head, a faint smile under the mask. "Not wrong, just didn't understand it. We tried to fight it like a Bf-109, like a Spitfire. That's what got us in trouble. But once you respect its strengths, speed in level flight, durability, firepower, it becomes something else entirely. A fighter that punishes mistakes rather than making them." Harper stepped forward, still shaking his head. "You've turned what we all laughed at into a weapon. 6 kills, 6 without ever climbing into danger. That's not skill, that's mastery." The squadron listened intently as Art explained his approach in detail. How to maintain energy in level flight, how to resist the instinct to climb unnecessarily, how to manipulate the enemy into overcommitting. Diagrams were drawn on hangar walls. Pilots leaned over maps, tracing flight paths and altitudes, trying to internalize the lesson. For the rookies, It was a revelation. For the veterans, a humbling reminder that every aircraft had hidden potential waiting to be unlocked by the pilot who truly understood it. Art concluded, "It's not the aircraft that wins the fight. It's the pilot who knows the limits and uses them better than the enemy." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning, as the squadron absorbed the lesson. From that day forward, the Hurricane was no longer ridiculed for its poor climb rate. Under Art's guidance, it became a weapon of precision, a plane that punished recklessness and rewarded discipline. The mockery faded, replaced by respect and careful study of how a seemingly useless climb rate could be exploited to devastating effect. In the weeks that followed, Art's tactics became the blueprint for surviving against more nimble enemy fighters. Squadron pilots practiced relentlessly, focusing on maintaining level flight, conserving energy, and forcing the Luftwaffe into vertical overextensions. The Hurricane, once dismissed as slow and cumbersome, now became a disciplined predator in the hands of those who learned its subtle advantages. During another engagement over the English Channel, Art's squadron faced a larger formation of Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs. Enemy pilots, confident in their climb superiority, attempted the usual tactic, rapid ascents followed by diving attacks. But Art's squadron held steady, refusing to engage in vertical duels. They remained fast, level, and coordinated, exploiting the enemy's overzealous climbs. Art picked his targets carefully, letting each pursuer commit to a steep climb before lining up his guns. One by one, enemy aircraft stalled or lost speed, falling into his crosshairs. His calm precision turned what had once been a vulnerability into a deadly advantage. On the radio, Harper's voice carried a tone of disbelief and admiration. "Beckett, you're turning their strength into their weakness. Unbelievable." By the end of that sortie, multiple enemy fighters were shot down, and Art's squadron returned largely unscathed. Reports of the engagement praised the innovative tactics employed by the pilots, highlighting how understanding the Hurricane's limits and resisting the temptation to fight on the enemy's terms had preserved lives and secured victories. For Art, the lesson was clear. Aircraft performance on paper meant little compared to a pilot who could exploit strengths and mitigate weaknesses. The ridicule of the past was gone, replaced by respect, trust, and a new tactical philosophy that would shape how Hurricanes were flown for the remainder of the war. When the squadron returned to base, the debriefing room buzzed with excitement and curiosity. Senior officers who had once scoffed at the Hurricane's supposed shortcomings listened intently as Art recounted the engagement in precise detail. He explained how maintaining level speed, exploiting the aircraft's durability, and refusing to bleed energy in turning fights had allowed him to shoot down 6 enemy fighters without ever turning back. "Lieutenant Beckett," the wing commander said, leaning forward, "this is exactly the kind of tactical innovation we need. You've taken a perceived weakness and turned it into a weapon. This approach will be studied and taught throughout the fleet." The pilots who had once mocked Art's Hurricane watched quietly, their expressions a mixture of awe and shame. Parker, now more confident, muttered to Daniels, "I thought the plane was useless, but it's deadly in the right hands." Art didn't claim heroism. He emphasized discipline, patience, and knowledge of the aircraft's limits. "It's not about the plane itself," he told the squadron. "It's about understanding what it can and cannot do, and making the enemy make the mistakes you want them to make." The story of that engagement spread quickly, first through the squadron, then across units flying Hurricanes. Art's technique, once dismissed as foolish, became an essential lesson in air combat. New pilots were trained to respect energy management, to avoid unnecessary climbs, and to exploit the enemy's overconfidence. By the time Art flew his next series of missions, the ridicule had vanished. Where once his aircraft was derided, now it was respected. feared even, by those who understood that tactical intelligence often outweighed raw performance. And for the young pilots who had witnessed the 6 kills, the lesson was indelible. Mastery of an aircraft's limits could be more lethal than sheer speed or climb rate. As the war pressed on, Art Beckett's approach to flying the Hurricane became more than just a tactical quirk. It became doctrine. Training manuals began including sections on energy management, level flight engagement, and exploiting aircraft limitations. Pilots were taught to resist instinctive climbs, to trust their speed, and to turn the enemy's strengths into liabilities. Art continued flying sorties, each engagement reinforcing the lesson he had proven over the North Sea. Enemy fighters would overcommit in their vertical pursuits, only to find themselves vulnerable to well-timed attacks from hurricanes that stayed fast, level, and disciplined. His squadron developed a reputation for surviving encounters that would have decimated other units, their success rooted not in superior aircraft, but in superior understanding of physics, momentum, and tactical patience. Veterans often recounted Art's 6 kills as a defining moment, a turning point that demonstrated how intelligence and observation could triumph over what appeared to be mechanical inferiority. New pilots studied his sorties, learning that knowledge of one's machine and the courage to defy conventional wisdom could determine life or death. Even decades later, the lesson endured. In the endless blue of training skies and the pages of historical accounts, Art Beckett's exploits were cited as proof that understanding an aircraft's limits could be more lethal than raw performance on paper. The Hurricane, once mocked for its poor climb rate, had become a symbol of disciplined mastery, and the pilot who refused to turn back had rewritten the rules of aerial combat. In the sky, where the roar of engines and the streak of tracer fire defined the boundary between life and death, Art Beckett's strategy lived on. Speed, discipline, and cunning could make even the useless climb rate a weapon of unparalleled lethality.